Hi there. 2023 was the worst year of my life, for the 5th year in a row. The Lakers lost the conference finals, Springtrap still hasn't been added to Fortnite, and my investment in Redfall merchandise really didn't pay off. A lot of my time last year was just spent looking out my window and thinking, man, where did it all go wrong? And just when I think I'm done with 2023, getting to Christmas, the nicest time of the year, my grandma passes away, which obviously really sucked at the time and still does now. It's something I haven't really dealt with before, and I found things pretty tricky for a while. Alright, that's enough sadness, bring the funny music back in. Now, as I said in this video, I find distraction to be a pretty nice thing. The ability to escape into a new world is something I absolutely needed, second only to the receipt that I lost. So there I am, comatose in my chair watching the Game Awards, and one thing really stood out to me. And no, it wasn't Hideo Kojima's glowing penis.
Baldur's Gate 3! Baldur's Gate 3! Baldur's Gate 3! Hello Kitty Island Adventure! Baldur's Gate 3!
Trusting Jeff's judgment, I got Baldur's Gate 3, not really knowing much about it other than it's similar to D&D, which I haven't played, and that it's incredibly immersive, exactly what I needed. So, here's the story of my playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3. As a brief introduction, this game takes you and your band of misfit party members on a top-down adventure through a mystical world, filled with turn-based combat and lots of narrative. Now, turn-based combat has always been a bit hit and miss for me, but I'll get to that later. The first step of my journey was to create a character. Now, this is always the hardest part, as I feel like there's two paths to go down. Do you A, create a cool guy with an interesting backstory, or do you B, create a lizard wizard called Gonk who casts spells such as Grease, summon a pool of grease that makes foes slip over? Most of the time I pick B because it's funny. Recently I've made Mr. Freeze in Bloodborne, Chris Wink of the Blue Man Group in Elden Ring, and the one known only as Little Richard in Street Fighter 6. And for the first couple hours of Baldur's Gate I went with Gonk, but I found that something crazy happened. I found myself getting really involved with the story and the characters, and every time the camera would cut to Gonk, I would just lose all that immersion. So I caved and went back to create an actual cool character. So, this is my guy. He's a half-elf rogue called Eren, with a Y because it's a fantasy game. The sign of a good character creator is the fact that I spent like 2 hours creating Eren. There's lots of different classes to choose, backgrounds and races, which helps to make your character feel unique. Anyway, I've chosen my hero, now it's time to start the game. Oh, never mind, I have to create another character. Okay, I'll see you in 2 hours. The first couple hours of gameplay do a good job of introducing you to the mechanics, mainly the dice roll, which is used in pretty much everything you do in this game, and I have thoughts about it. This mirrors actual Dungeons & Dragons, which this game is very heavily inspired by. Now look, I don't really know much about D&D. The only stuff I knew before making this video is from watching Critical Role. Most of the time I don't know what's going on. I just watched to see Goro Akechi, Ellie, Last of Us and Ganondorf pretend to be goblins. From what I know, in D&D you're going on an adventure guided by the Dungeon Master, that's the Neek with all the lore books. And most of the interaction is the Dungeon Master being like, you stumble across a cave in the woods with stone-carved stairs leading down to it. You attempt to walk down the stairs. Please roll for leg motor functions. You miss the stairs and fall directly into a pit of lava. Please roll for fire resistance. You immediately douse the flames and you are undamaged. In the fall, you grazed your knee. Please roll for immune system response. You contract tetanus and die. Please roll for insurance payouts. Like, what? Everything is up to a dice roll, which leads to a few situations where you feel a bit hard done by, and will often load a previous save just to get the result you want. Obviously, that goes against the spirit of the game and the mechanics, but in a game like this, where every decision matters and can change the shape of the story, things can feel a bit out of your control. Now, there are ways to nudge the chances in your favor. Based on your character's upbringing and class, you get bonuses to your roll. For example, my character is really good at lockpicking and not much else. You can also re-roll by using this resource, but it's really hard to get and you can only have 4 at one time, and save scumming works just as well. Now don't get me wrong, luck and chance are big features of almost every game. If you want the Rod of Discord in Terraria, that's like a 1 in 500 bajillion chance, and a clutch critical hit in Persona can be the difference between a win and a squad wipe. But when a dice roll is such a big feature of the game, it can definitely feel satisfying, but also, when it's not your day, it's not your day. It's hard to know if the perception check I failed was just for a bit of lore, or a trap that's gonna kill me. Of course it was a trap that's gonna kill me. Oh hey Lazel, what's up? We started with a bit of a nitpick, but now it's time for the biggest praise I have for this game, which is that pretty much everything else is perfect. The world of Baldur's Gate 3 is truly massive and so alive. This is probably the most immersed I've ever been in a game, and it's a world in which goblins are real. For each interaction there's multiple ways you can react, which lead to multiple outcomes, which lead to 10 million other things. Conveying the massive scale in a video is a challenge in itself, so Let's just start with the characters. There are a lot of party members who you'll go adventuring with, all of whom have their own classes and proficiencies, their own backstories, and will react to what you say in different ways. You've got Astarion, the funny vampire rogue, Shadowheart, the amnesiac cleric, Will with a Y because it's a fantasy game, the list goes on. Each character is fully voiced and done so superbly, really making them feel like real people. In most open world games, you have some lines here and there, a lot of the time in important cutscenes. In this game, every line is voiced, from the important narrative events to the bits of chatter in the towns. And this becomes even more insane when you realise how many characters and dialogue options there are. Astarion alone, one of the 6 quote-unquote main characters, has 13 hours of voice lines. There's a character who I guarantee like 80% of people will kill in their first playthrough, not realising that they can become a fully voiced party member for the remaining 80 hours of the game. Like, it's insane. Another thing is just how much freedom you're given. Choices you make actually matter. In most games I choose the silly dialogue option because I know it's not really going to make a difference. I'm still going to be guided down the right path and to the events that have to happen. In Baldur's Gate, decisions you made near the start of the game can affect things hours down the line, and you'll just have to experience that for yourself. There are of course events that have to happen for you to complete the game, but the ways in which you reach those events and with who are just endless. You really have to think about what you're doing. Story time. Early in the game I found this like ancient god who commanded me to kneel. I instead thought it'd be really funny to do a goofy little wave at them instead. I mean, that's not going to change anything, right? Game over, you have been smitten from existence. Anyway, to show just how much freedom you're given, I'm going to show a goblin-based case study. A quick note, this video talks about the same thing I'm about to talk about, but in way more detail. It's a really good video and you should check it out. I'll leave it in the description. One of the first main things you're told to do in this game is to take out this goblin camp in order to protect some civilians and rescue a prisoner. The way the game presents to you is that you need to eliminate the 3 leaders. Simple enough, that's one way to do it, but instead of this you can poison the goblins while they're partying, sneak into the camp and unlock this gate, releasing the captive spiders who will take out the goblins for you, morph into a drow because drow and gobbos are bestest friends, the list goes on. In my playthrough I found this random goblin prisoner and decided to free them, and as thanks they led me directly to the camp where I was then seen as an ally. I then convinced them to attack the civilians before I betray them at the last second so we can fight them on our own grounds. This is one mission and there are so many ways to do it that I haven't even talked about. I don't even know how they made this game. The combat is also worth talking about. It's turn-based but so in-depth. You have to pay attention to what action you take, how far you can move, how different terrain will affect your turn, and how you can use it to your advantage. There's so many spells. This one makes foes watch a window ledge video, causing them to laugh uncontrollably. There's another one called Vicious Mockery, in which you insult an enemy. I used this like twice in the 50 hours I've played. Simple, silly spell, right? Surely they didn't put loads of effort into this, right? Wrong, let's record 2 hours of insults. What I will say though is that this game is definitely not for everyone. The luck mechanics and just how overwhelming it can be will definitely deter players. I found things a bit intense as well. You're balancing the ways in which you want to do things while also being cautious about how your friends will react and how that affects your relationship. Like if I wanted to be in a relationship with Astarion, you know, completely hypothetical, I have to be a prick to everyone in order to gain his approval. But it's worth it in the end. I just hope there are a few scenes my grandma didn't see. If I had to say something annoying about this game, I guess it'd be that sometimes navigating the world can be a bit painful because your party members don't always listen to you. Like, sometimes they get left behind because they refuse to jump a 2-foot gap, then you have to switch to them and do it yourself, which causes the others to jump back, and one must imagine me losing my goddamn mind. Also, navigating trap rooms can be a bit annoying, as you either have to be really slow and coordinated, or use 10 million trap disarm toolkits. Shadowheart, please don't step on that. Oh my god. There are so many more things I can say about the game, but getting them across is honestly pretty tricky, so I'm just going to say this. Baldur's Gate 3 came to me at a pretty low point, and I absolutely needed it. It took me into a completely new world that felt so real and interactive, with characters that felt like good friends and in-depth combat mechanics. I could imagine doing 10 playthroughs of this game and still discovering new things. I don't think it's for everyone, but if you put in the time and attention this game deserves, you will be rewarded with an incredible experience. All that's left for me to say is thanks for watching, and that bidding starts at $1.